Hey, everybody. Welcome to the SNL Stats Roundtable for episode number 4 with host Adele and musical guest H.E.R. My name is John, and my psychic also told me that I would be attending a lot of concerts in 2020, but here we are. So if you haven't checked out last week's show, the Issa Rae show with Liz Shannon Miller from Collider, Dennis Perkins from the AV Club, who always rates really amazing SNL recaps, and superfan Sammy K, make sure to check it out. Search SNL Stats on YouTube, subscribe to the show, or you can find us on any podcatcher and listen to any of our previous shows from this season, including a preseason show as well. But let's move on to tonight. We have a really fun panel for you. First up, he joined us for our premiere with Chris Rock. He has co-hosted a podcast on Rob Has a Podcast and Post-Show Recaps. It is Rich Tackenberg. Rich, how you doing?
I gotta pick a good week to get booked. This is going to be a fun one to talk about. So I'm doing good SNL, good Rich. I am good.
Well, we're really happy to have you on the show, Rich, and I can't wait to hear your hot takes. I actually brought you up last week. I don't know if you heard the show, but I made a Rich Tackenberg reference.
I did. Yes, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So
more appropriate for this one than that one, but we'll talk about it, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, it is my pleasure to welcome back one half of the SNL Nerds podcast, which you can check out every single week with another one of the many Johns that hosts an SNL podcast around. Darin Patterson, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, John. Thanks for having me on again. Two times the charm, as they say. Look forward to talk about SNL, and I can't wait to be invited 3 more times, and I can get that sweet jacket.
Yeah, we've already brought it up a few times, but we'll see who gets the 5 first. But for the first time, our first guy that we have here from the SNL Reddit, which is really cool because when I sent out a call for superfans, I got some messages on Twitter and I got some on Reddit. And this guy said, you have to have me on the show. Andrew Haynes, he is very popular on the SNL subreddit live from New York, and he has done some really cool things on there, but I'm going to let him tell you about it. So Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I've been watching every episode of your show, of course, and obviously of SNL this season. So very excited to talk about that. The subreddit did have a very exciting off season. We created our own at-home episode, which was great fun. And for those of you who haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's at the YouTube SNL Reddit, so you can check it out there. And I just really look forward to talking to you guys tonight about some great Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, well, we're really excited to have you on. I've asked all the first-time guests to give me their background on SNL, kind of how you fell in love with the show and why you wanted to talk about it. So if you don't mind sharing with our audience, tell me a little bit about your history with SNL.
Well, SNL stole me away from Mad TV when I was about 12 or 13 years old. Obviously a step up on the sketch comedy. I hope I'm not offending any Mad TV fans out there. But, at that time in the mid 90s, they were just running SNL all day on Comedy Central. So, with that and all I watched was Comedy Central. The Dana Carvey stand up at the piano that they played over and over again with the and all the SNL episodes. So that's kind of what got me sucked in when I was about 12 or 13. And by the time I was 13, I wore my SNL shirt, a different one, not this one, but I wore a SNL shirt pretty much every day of 7th grade, enough to get made fun of for it. And so I've been sucked into SNL for quite a while. And, like many folks, my high school cast were, very formative, made a great impression on me with Maya Rudolph, Molly Shannon, Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, Tracy Morgan. But I never stopped watching, and I realized as I get older, it's impossible to have a favorget cast.
Well, nobody's going to make fun of you here. So,
okay.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you on. But let's get into our first segment that we do every single week, which is really general thoughts on the season, without getting too much into the episode just yet. But I want to talk about, everyone's opinions. It's been a while since we heard from some of you guys and how you feel about the season so far. So, Rich, let me start with you. It's been about 3 weeks since we heard from you. I know that you always have the hot takes ready to go. So let me hear what your thoughts are on season 46.
I think that we're in a really good spot. I think, I said when I first came on, my experience is often that the season premieres are always a little bit rough in the writing and sort of the performing. And here, when you had so many logistics, I think we really felt a lot of the sort of push-pull. I can always tell, in LA, we get the show now live at 8:30, which is such a blessing because at 52, 8:30 is the new 11:30. So it's fantastic for me. And then I'll go back and I'll watch it on Hulu. And in those first couple of episodes, you can see the edit cleanups that they did from a purely technical perspective to sort of tighten it together. And, and I always sort of feel like the writing hits right around episode 4. And this is exactly it. I mean, I think we had 3 good episodes, some better than others, some with some real bumpy spots. This was really, I thought, out of the gate, a really strong episode. So I like where we are. I like where we're going. I think we'll talk about a little bit how COVID is affecting. I think the one thing I would say in general is I do think what we don't hear talked about much is how much the size of the audience impacts the show. Because I think it's a much smaller audience, and when a sketch kills, the whole audience laughs. But when you've got a Weekend Update joke or a small joke in a sketch that only gets about a third of the audience laughing, that's where I think in a full audience it would still feel like it's working, but with the smaller audience, the joke feels like it died. So I think that's been the hardest part of COVID, is not sort of the restrictions and the masks and the writing as much as just not having that full audience to carry some of those jokes that weren't meant to make everybody laugh. They were meant to make a small group laugh really, really hard, and we're not getting that. But overall, I think we're really hitting on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And Darin, I think that's one of the things that we spoke about in the preseason with the panel that we had here was how COVID was going to impact the actual logistics of the show. And it seems that having a smaller audience could actually, in fact, affect the comedy. So from the perspective of a comedian yourself, if you don't mind commenting on that and what you thought so far.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think about the size of the audience until just now, but yeah, I have noticed like the laughs aren't as big as they used to be, pre-COVID, and like for a while I was thinking, or is it because the writing isn't as good? And like for some of the sketches that's true, but yeah, for the most part, like you guys said, just because it's a smaller audience, so the laughs aren't really there, like they were pre-COVID. I think even, and also like I've also noticed like with some of the episodes that have come out recently, it seems like the jokes are getting a little bit more like maybe I would say a little less PC. It seems like they're getting to be a little bit more risque with their humor, or a little bit more dangerous, I guess. Because like we've had the episode with the last week's with the titty meat, and this one with the African tourism. It seems like they're going a little bit more, and with the Chris Rock when they had that sketch with the NBA bubble, it seems like they're like kind of dipping their toe in a little bit more dangerously in the dangerous waters, as it were. And of course, you always have Che, who says like some insanely outrageous, hilarious stuff. So
yeah,
it seems like they're going a little bit more of maybe a little bit more dangerous direction, which I like.
Yeah, the way I kind of felt about it, and I think that if you've watched all of our panels or listened to any other podcasts in the last, few weeks, is that we watched the Chris Rock episode, and it really felt like, okay, they're putting their feet in the shallow end. Maybe they're dipping their toes in, and it felt like Bill Burr basically took all the cast and just pushed everybody in the pool. And now we're really getting into some more, non-PC stuff, possibly. So it's interesting to see the development of that. And I've been encouraging over the last few weeks, and, to everybody's credit who's a fan of SNL, just saying, push the envelope, do some, things that make, people laugh in a time that is so serious in the real world, make people say things that they wouldn't normally say on the show. And, that's exciting. So, Andrew, let me bring you in. Tell me what you thought about the season so far for someone who's, loved the show their whole life.
Well, I mean, now with the announcement of Mulaney, we're talking about comedians hosting 3 of the first 5 episodes. If it were up to me, comedians would host every episode. And they carry themselves the best. The monologue is so important and they always crush it. So, I was thrilled to death to hear about Chris Rock and Bill Burr and John Mulaney. I really couldn't ask for anything more except Dave Chappelle. Those guys are as good as it gets, you know. And I am asking for Dave Chappelle for the election episode. But we'll see. So yeah, I think it's been. I mean, the first episode, particularly the cold open. I don't know whose fault it was, but the lines and the cameras, we weren't all on the same page. There was a lot of jumpiness. I felt like it was kind of crashing, where punchlines were supposed to land. That was a little bit of a rough start. And overall, that episode didn't knock me out of the water. Darin mentioned the NBA draft thing. I didn't really get it when it was starting. But I thought the last few episodes have been increasingly better. Meg the Stallion's performance in the first episode was outstanding. Jack White, outstanding. I did not know much about her, but that song "Damage" is definitely going on my sexy time list. So there's been a lot of great stuff so far, and I could ramble all day about it. So I'll let you moderate.
No, you're doing good. I think that, one of the things before we get into the specifics of this episode, Rich, I like I said, I mentioned you last week because one of the things that always stood out to me when I listened to your coverage a few years ago, whether it was with Rob or with Mike, was, you always said that SNL is supposed to feel like a party that we're all invited to. And I brought that up purposely last week because I knew I was going to have you on. And that has always been a little bit of a litmus test for me, is do I feel like I'm attending this really cool party with all of my celebrity friends when I'm watching SNL? And, some of the episodes had that, some didn't. But, how do you feel overall? Has the season accomplished that thus far?
I think for me, this was the episode that really cracked that open. I feel like the moment when Adele walks off of the Bachelor sketch and continues singing in front of the audience and sort of teeing up what's going to be the Village People singing at the end of Weekend Update, I absolutely felt like I'm at the coolest party in the world this week. I think it took us a little bit to get there. I think there's been moments that were very, very fun within the constraints of a comedy show, of a sketch show. This is the one that I felt like really broke it open. And even towards the end where some of the sketches didn't work as well, I definitely felt like I was at a party and I was really enjoying myself. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had something similar last week where I believe it was the end of the Issa Rae show. Like there was the sketch with the X's where they had all these weird X's they were appearing.
Right.
And then afterwards we had this pan out where you were able to see the audience behind the actual sketch. And it was like, oh, this is cool. This is like what they did in the 70s and the 80s when they showed the audience and made fun of them and let everybody know this is a live sketch show. And this isn't just, all pre-tapes that have been recorded for the show. This is something that's really cool and live and anything can go wrong at any time. And that's always been the fun of SNL, is that, this is dangerous and it's exciting, and live comedy is really hard to produce. So, Darin, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, as far as the season goes right now, I think it's in a good place right now. Like most people, I thought the first episode was a little shaky, but then, so far my two favorites have been the Bill Burr and the Issa Rae episodes. I really think they were super strong. I'm for both of those episodes, the Weekend Update was really strong. I thought Shay had some home runs in both those episodes. I'm feel like it's gonna be they're on a good trajectory, and like something like this that they've never done before. I mean, well, for one thing, they've never done a show in these conditions, in these COVID times, but now they're doing like 5, now 6 shows in a row, which they've never done before. So like I mean part of me is like a little nervous, like because I hope like the writers are able to pump out great material, and I hope everybody's able to keep up with the pace. But like but of course, like they've never done it before, so I don't know if they will be. But so far so good. And with Mulaney and the Strokes coming next week, I'm pretty hopeful. I'm pretty set.
Yeah, let's talk about that and stop down just for a minute before we get into the Adele stuff, which is, we had an announcement this week, and this was really the big headline of the SNL News right before the Adele show, which was they've extended the run from having 5 shows in a row, which I believe was already a record. Now we're going to do 6 shows in a row. And I've heard from listening to podcasts over the years that people say, well, by the time they get to the third show, they sometimes run out of ideas. And I don't know how true that is, but I know that, people have commented on the quality at the end of the run, that sometimes cast members need those few weeks off to recharge and think of new ideas and like just live a little to kind of inspire them. And now we're going to be doing our fourth, or we just did our fourth. Now we're going to do our fifth and sixth show in a row. So Andrew, do you have a perspective on this? Are you worried at all about the quality, even though we're bringing in a very seasoned host in John Mulaney next week?
Not worried about the quality. Not worried about the quality at all. Doing 6 episodes or at least 5 in a row, is insanity. But, you say, well, they could use, some time off to, blow off steam or do whatever they do. Well, you can't do anything now, so you can't. So might as well just direct all your energy to SNL. Like, these are workers. These guys and women write their butts off. That's, and act. So this is what they do. So, I mean, hunker down. I don't think they're scared of the challenge. I think we've all, would you prefer to play 4 quarters than 6? Yeah. But a double OT football game is, you're not going to give up, you keep playing. And I think these people will be all in. I can't imagine the show losing much steam as we're, just moving into Halloween and then an election episode. So I'm not worried about the content at all.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I expect a lot of energy. It's not, I don't know how often this happens. I'd have to go back and check, but having a show on Halloween night, is bound to be inspiring with regards to the comedy. And then having a post-election show is always exciting, no matter what happens, to see, the commentary on whatever, if there is a decision by then, which we don't know.
And also, we have such a big cast. Mikey Day had almost no screen time this week. Kyle Mooney had almost no screen time. We had 2 of our key cast members not there. You can imagine that we're sort of playing people in different positions. You could imagine next week where Chris Redd, gets a little bit less time and Heidi Gardner gets a little less time and more people sort of fill in. Maybe 80s be able to come back or Cecily's be able to come back. So I think that this could be the benefit of having such a big cast where you're not burning everybody out every week. Plus, remember, with Mulaney, not only are you getting a great host and you're getting a great monologist, you're also getting a writer. So we'll talk about at the end, are we going to get a musical sketch? But he's been able to write for at least a week more than everybody else on his own, knowing that he's going to be hosting. So I think that's going to set us up for a really nice episode. And then I think that 6th episode, it's either going to be, it's going to be crazy. Because we know that SNL as an entity has a political leaning, and it's either going to be very happy or very upset. And I think great comedy comes from either of those options.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I want to, dive into the analytics a little bit more about screen time and the things you're discussing, because, Lauren and all the producers are really just like a basketball coach right now. If somebody works too hard in one episode and maybe is a little bit tired, you're totally right. They do have the privilege and the opportunity to bring out amazing comedians and put them out for the next episode a little bit more maybe than they were the week before. So it's a really great point, Rich. Darin, I want to turn to the cold open. And I think that we've discussed, every single week we're in election season now, so we know what we're going to get. And this was the last debate sketch, but we knew, a lot of eyes are on this moment. How is SNL going to talk about the final debate? What has been your opinion? I've kind of heard, yours and your co-host's thoughts on the SNL Nerds show, which I encourage everyone to check out. But, for those who haven't heard yet, tell me your thoughts about, Jim Carrey's Biden and what you've think. How have they done? What grade would you give them for, the debates?
If I'm going to be honest, I haven't been too wild about the cold opens. I think I said it on my podcast before. It just seems like I'm not sure why they just insist on the cold open being 12 minutes long or 11 minutes long, but it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't seem like they have the jokes to fill up that 10 or 12 minutes. A lot of the jokes are okay, and some hit a little bit harder than others. But for some reason, they all have to be this length. And I think I'd much rather just them kind of have a shorter cold open, just fill up the jokes in that short amount of time and make it a tighter, better cold open. And also on the podcast, I think me and my buddy John have said, like Jim Carrey's Biden isn't. I don't know if he's nailed it really. It seems like, I think my buddy John said, like, it seems like he's still kind of workshopping it, like on the episode, like he's still trying to figure it out while he's doing it on the show, which maybe will explain why in one episode he kind of went into his Jeff Goldblum impression, because he has one in the pocket, and this past episode he went into his Clint Eastwood impression a little bit because he has a Clint Eastwood in the pocket. So I don't know. The cold opens have been no pun intended, just leaving me kind of cold, just because it feels like they're still kind of figuring it out and it's not quite hitting like it should. Yeah,
I see what you're saying. And for those who haven't checked it out, one of my favorite SNL writers from the last 10 or 15 years is a guy named Mike Ryan. If Mike, you somehow hear this, shout out to you, because he started writing a couple of articles this season about SNL, and one of them came out today, and it was it was on Up Rocks, and it was about Biden. And he made a really interesting point, which I wanted to bring up on the cast tonight, which was basically that when cast members play politicians, they have time to develop these impressions. And, it seems like an obvious thing, but when you really think about it, if you go back in the history of SNL and you think about, Will Ferrell doing Bush, or Dana Carvey doing HW, you kind of think about how they developed the impressions. And they had episodes, whether it was, during the primaries, to try and figure out and nail down these impressions so that when they have the most eyeballs during election season, they're able to, do these things properly. And when you bring in someone like Baldwin, who they may have caught fire with and got lucky with Trump at the beginning, and now you have Carey coming in to play Biden, they don't really know what works and what doesn't work, because these people have not been around SNL for a long time. So Andrew, I'm going to bring you in. Tell me what you think about the political cold opens in the last few weeks and comment on that.
So I'm totally okay with the political cold opens. I feel like it's part of the game. It's par for the course. We expect it, and I'm okay with that. During election years, we've come to expect it. I've got to agree with Darin that they're going on too long. Sometimes it's 20 minutes into the episode, but after the monologue and commercial break, before we're getting a sketch with anything else going on. And I think he makes a good point about there not being enough jokes crammed in there. Part of the reason that I like laughs. I like them coming quick and often. I think the reason that Michael Che is my favorite cast member is because, per word, he gets the most laughs per word. Like if you, I don't know if you have the stats on how many words people say in an episode, but you're getting laughs per few words with Michael Che.
You would be surprised, but there's only so much you can do on a podcast. So
sure.
Yeah, but no, you make a good point.
So I think, they do this thing where I think they're going for kind of some, who am I to call it low hanging fruit? I'm not a writer pumping this material out every week, but they're really big on kind of hitting every keystone moment from the debate, even if they might not have really moved America that much. Like they had to have Biden, or they have to have Carey's Biden say, they're not living with it, man. They're dying with it, and it's like, he said that during the debate, and it was kind of, okay, like, I know you're going for your little line, and they have to have, they have to have Kamala say, I'm speaking. And like, we all experience these moments, but like, they weren't that funny in real life. Are they going to be that funny that we're, redoing them on the show? Like, for me, just write a joke, cram a joke in there. I don't know if saying, and I love Maya Rudolph's Kamala Harris, but I don't know if just saying I'm speaking is a joke.
Yeah. I have a question for the panel, which I don't know if any of you would know this from looking online on Saturday night or Sunday morning, but can anyone guess what was unique about this cold open that doesn't happen very often? Anyone have anything?
I mean, there was no cast members in it except for a cameo by a cast member. It was the strangest thing that now cast members do cameo on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Exactly. And yes, we did have Kate playing Giuliani, but we're talking about, as far as the A players in this sketch, it is very rare on SNL that you get a cold open and you don't have any of your cast playing a primary role in the cold open, because they are the opening of your show. Rich, I don't know if you like.
I can go on about this. I want to agree and disagree with everyone. Yeah, I mean, so much.
Yeah.
This is one of the first times you have an alumni or a guest playing a character that's not in any way an impression. Maya Rudolph is not doing an impression of the moderator. She's just being the straight woman in the sketch. Now, you can argue that because of some specific ethnicity of the person that you didn't want to go to Ego, and you also didn't want to go to Chloe, so maybe it was based on that, but it wasn't an impression. You really had that. So a couple of things, on the impression thing, I hadn't read the article, but I want to agree and sort of add to that. I mean, when we talk about impressions, and I think this is something if we talk about Melissa and Weekend Update, we're going to get to, good impressions are two things. One, they are the physicality of the impression. It's the voice, it's the mannerisms, it's the look. But it's also, what is the thing about this person that we are going to make fun of?
It's a caricature.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's the person, it's the essence. It's not the mannerisms, it's not the physical. It's, we're making fun of their dumb, we're making fun of their old, we're making fun. What is the thing about them? When you're a cast member on SNL, you're almost always involved in both of those at the same time. You're obviously involved in the physicality and the voice and the walk and the look and the tics, but you're also almost always either in the writing staff, for those sketches, or you are the main writer, for those sketches. Jim Carrey is not a writer on these sketches. Alec Baldwin is not a writer on these sketches. So you've got two disparate groups who are in creating that impression. The impression of Joe Biden is just as much done by the writing staff as it is by Jim Carrey, because those two have to merge together, and they're merging together generally with probably at most 1 day of rehearsal, if not less. So I think it's very challenging, and that's why I would much rather see you throw it to Alex Moffat and see what he can do, because he's going to have much more time to develop not only the looks and stuff, but also the voice and stuff. That's one. Okay. Now, as far as the cold opens go, I agree with what you guys are saying, except that I would say this week was clearly the best of the cold opens by leaps and bounds. No, I'm not even going to accept your head nodding. They're nodding. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm getting negative nods, and they're wrong. You should listen to me. No, I of course wanted to agree. I thought that, again, they're all imperfect, but I thought that there was the most fun. It was the cleanest, and it's for the reason that I think Andrew brought up, which I thought was very, very, I had thought of the same thing. I thought he expressed it very well. They obviously feel they have an obligation to cover these debates, and I get it. From just the casual viewer wants to see it. But I hate when they're doing the moment by moment, we're sort of doing the rundown, checking off the boxes. And this had very few of them. This had it's not a plan of living, it's a plan of dying. It had a couple of the Biden mannerisms that he did, and we're doing the bingo. But for the most part, most of the joke runs were really just riffing off the candidates in general. I loved the whole bird thing that we did that kind of made no sense. There was a lot of stuff about sort of the toilet bowls that I thought were really funny, and him describing himself as like the best mid-size in his class by J.D. Powers. So I thought that worked way better than the other ones did. If it were me, I always say this, my hope and dream with SNL is not to do the thing that they have an obligation to do, but to do the thing that didn't exist. That I think of all of 2016's election sketches, the entire run, the funniest one was the night after the night of the election, when the white people can't believe that Trump won. It wasn't them trying to parody a moment, it was them coalescing a feeling that the rest of topical Twitter and topical late night television hadn't had a chance to really coalesce. So I really hope we see more of that and less of these. But that said, I thought this one was pretty funny, guys.
Well, I want to do a little bit of point counterpoint. So, Andrew, give me the one, you were the one who was nodding your head the most. Which is your cold open that stood out to you? And tell me why Rich is wrong.
So, well, to me, there was one that just stood head and shoulders above the rest, and that was because of the weirdness. I have to say, The Fly was the most thrilling.
Oh, are you kidding me? Oh my God! I wanted to kill myself during that part. Oh,
I was reawakened as a human during that sketch. I thought, oh my gosh, SNL is getting weird again. Praise Jesus, SNL is getting weird. And I loved how, I mean, the Goldblum, they brought back a dead Herman Cain, and I'd never even seen The Fly, and I've heard people talk about it now, but and maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much, because I knew that, well, I kind of knew there was a thing, I hadn't seen The Fly, but I knew a little bit about it. But to me, I'm a sucker for weirdness, and that was by far, I thought, the weirdest cold open, and it felt creative and exciting in a way that the other ones haven't so far.
So this is great, and I'm going to tell you why. Because we're 4 people on this panel right now, and Rich says that if he had to pick one cold open that was the best all season, it was this one that happened this week with host Adele. And if you had to ask Andrew, he says it's the Bill Burr one. And if I'm going to put my vote in, I'm actually going to say it's the Issa Rae one. So that's why. So this is what I love, because
it's great. This is the best. Yeah.
This is what SNL wants, is they want basically different comedy for different people and different things to appeal. And I'm going to argue my thoughts about why I think it's the Issa Rae one. And it's because of the pace of the cold open. And that's what I said last week, is that it was super fast paced. You had them switching between the channels, switching between the different scenes. And that's what made it exciting, because they didn't dwell on a joke for too long. It went back and forth. So that was what appealed to me. So basically, we have 3 different people who love 3 different cold opens. Now, Darin, I'm going to bring you in here. If you tell me you like the Chris Rock open, that's going to be really interesting.
Wow. All right. I guess I got it. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't too crazy about most of this cold open, but if I had to pick one, I guess I would lead towards the Issa Rae one a little.
Oh, so then I won
more.
That one.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it best. Like, you like that the cold opens are getting weird again, and I think that might be because just these debates have been just so abnormal and just so kind of like parody proof that you have to go weird with it a little bit. Like, I think we talked about it on my podcast, where we were saying with the like the town halls and the debates have been such a parody of what we're normally used to. Like, how do you parody a parody type of thing? You know what I mean? How do you mock something that's kind of already just like a mockery? So like I felt like the only way they could go with it was to go surreal and weird and oddball, which would explain like the first 3 ones. The last one on the Adele episode, it wasn't that strange, but yeah. But I mean, I do like that SNL is getting like kind of weird with it, like before the 10-1.
It had 10-1 vibes all over it. That's what I kept thinking to myself.
Yeah. Well, this is really great. And this is exactly what I want, is to be able to share the different opinions. And I'm curious, as we move on from the cold open and kind of talk about this episode and in the next segment, which is really, what did you like? What didn't you like? I want to go through the panel and figure that out, because we may actually all like different things. And that's great too. So Rich, let me start with you. Tell me about certain things that stood out to you in this episode. What did you like? What didn't you like? And I sent you guys some notes. So let me know if you want to, cover any stats or anything like that. And we'll kind of get into things in more detail.
I mean, there's a lot that I liked about this episode. I mean, I do think that the first sketch out of the monologue, the psychic sketch, I think was probably my favorite. And the reason for me it was my favorite is it is a premise. They set up the premise in the first 45 seconds that, okay, it's a psychic, but this is the year 2019. Now, right away, I feel like I have seen a version of this 100 times this year. And I thought, you're not going to make me laugh, because there's nothing you're going to say that is going to be different or novel. And they came from it not from they weren't making a political statement. They just picked all these things about washing the bag of Doritos you're not using enough soap to wash the bag of Doritos. And the fact that we all know the name of the Postmaster General. What a gorgeous piece of writing this was, of not picking how many people died or this or that, but just picking those ridiculous facts about, even with the Jeffrey Toobin thing, the fact that when Heidi says, "What's a Zoom? What is a Zoom?" I thought it was so wonderfully done. So there's a couple of things I liked, but for me, that was home run.
Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on that sketch?
Well, it was probably my favorite sketch of the night. And nothing wrong with getting with starting off with a really great sketch. A lot of people would. Well, SNL's a little different. We know what the 10 to 1s are. A lot of people save their best stuff for the closer. I like opening with a closer, but fantastic sketch. And yeah, why do I know the Postmaster General's full name in 2020? It's such a great line. But the whole and well, I don't know what more I can say. Rich, you did a great job speaking about it, but to me, I thought it was the sketch of the episode.
Yeah, it was very clever, and what I liked was last week we had this like Hi Bonjour sketch to start off the show, and I'm from Montreal, so it appeals to me, but nobody else would like want to put that right as the opening spot. And I think it was I had family members who were texting me about it and said, you have to check out the sketch. Obviously I'm watching the show, and they're saying like, my one comment was like, this is really funny for us, but like if the show was made for us, we would put this in the first sketch spot, because a lot of people do go to bed after the first actual sketch. I believe like that's like just a known fact about SNL, is that like the viewership goes down at a certain point, and then people will PVR the show and watch the rest of it the next day. So I assume that you want to put your home run sketch right at the beginning, and I do believe they did that for this episode. Darin.
Yeah, I guess my favorite I guess would be the election ad, the pre-tape. I thought that was a really interesting. Yep. That was probably my sketch of the night. Like I just liked how it kind of how can I explain it? It kind of went away. I really wasn't expecting. It kind of brought up something that maybe a lot of us, American voters had kind of had in the back of our minds and really kind of addressed it. I don't know. I really dug that sketch. And if I'm being honest, like a little part of me did enjoy the African tourism sketch, just because it was pretty. I don't know. Like I said before, like it seems like SNL is trying to get a little bit more dangerous. Like maybe a little bit like in Living Color back in the day, or just a little bit more risque with their jokes and their sketches. So like the fact that they put that sketch on, and you can feel it in your stomach. I was like, oh wow, holy moly, SNL doing this? Well, I got a kick out of that.
Darin, here's the thing about that election ad sketch, and tell me if you guys had the same thing, which was the ad started, and I'm thinking to myself, is this an SNL sketch? I was like watching it for 30 or 45 seconds. I don't know how long it was, but that's how it felt. And I was watching and I was like, did they do a, like almost like not part of the show? Like they did their own commercial to encourage people to vote and vote a certain way? Because that would be we've talked over the last few years about how they've really gone, more partisan instead of bipartisan. That would be a major thing for the show to do, to completely say like, hey, this is the way that you should be voting, or this is the way we're nervous if things don't go our way. But then it took its like comedic turn, and whether you agree or disagree with the message, I felt better about the fact that this was a comedy sketch and not a like an ad for a certain candidate.
And to build on what Darin said, what I liked about it is, as I just said about the the Dave Chappelle sketch of the white people not believing that Hillary lost and the two black guys getting it. It was a point of view that I just haven't heard said. This idea of like, oh, what, like I think it was Melissa who says like, my personality is hating Trump. Like, what am I going to do? Like, pay attention to my kids again? Like, that's not going to happen. Like, it was such a great just perspective on things that was just so fun. And what I also like about the pre-tapes a lot of times is you get it and you're out. And that was a nice, it had a nice punch, a nice little turn about Keenan thinking about, the 2024 election, and we're out. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. So Andrew, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I loved that pre-tape as well. That's probably my second favorite. Africa tourism didn't hit quite as hard for me, but I will say that you can feel it in your stomach line was very, very funny. Everyone was talking. Everyone was acting like Adele ruined the sketch because she was laughing the whole time. And my defense of her has been, her biggest laugh came after "You can feel it in your stomach," and that's a pretty funny line. It's a pretty funny line. But I'm going to offer this is a hot take that might scare some listeners out there. I may be doing myself in with this.
Don't say it. Please don't say it. No, please don't say it. Go ahead.
Say it. Say it.
I feel like you can't possibly imagine what I'm going to say, but Pre-tape stuff has always been part of SNL from the very beginning. With the commercials and stuff, people, a lot of people, treat Andy Samberg like his whole legacy is the Lonely Island thing. But honestly, the reason that I tune in is for live performance. I love SNL for the same reason I love stand-up comedy and concerts. I like to see the interaction between people in real time. I like to see the energy in their bodies while they're doing live stuff. So I can now. I loved this pre-tape, and I'm not saying I would cut it. I'm not saying that at all. But I actually, the more live stuff you give me, the better. The less pre-tapes, the better. I don't think we would be having this. I don't think we'd be doing this roundtable if it were called Saturday Night Pre-Tape. I think it's all about the live performance. And here's the hottest part of the take. I actually wonder if Andy Samberg set SNL back permanently by increasing the popularity of these pre-tape bits. Bring it to me live, baby.
I think that's sacrilegious. and I'm just gonna say, because like you said it yourself, since 1975 they had Albert Brooks doing, they had pre-tape stuff. If you think about the famous John Belushi, ironically walking through the graves of the original, SNL cast, that's like a famous cold open. You think about the Phil Hartman and Jan Hooks dancing together, there are cold opens, Dick in a Box or all the other Andy Samberg stuff, like throughout the eras of the show. Pre-tapes have been a very big part of it, and it's just another way for the cast members to show off, their comedic chops and what they can do. Now, if your hot take was SNL relies way too much on the pre-tapes, so much so that it affects live comedy, I could see that. I think that there have been eras in the show, potentially right in the post Andy Samberg era, maybe where they're hiring like a Mike O'Brien to make pre-tapes and they're not necessarily of the same quality we were getting before. I don't know. Maybe something like that I could see. Rich, do you have any, your 2 cents on this?
Imagine if I said no, I don't have a take on this. What I think I would
You're the take master.
Dead. That would be my last thing. Of course I do. Yeah. I actually agree with both of you in that I love the pre-tapes. I love the pre-tapes when the pre-tapes are specifically a parody of a format. So if we're doing a commercial parody, if we're doing a music video parody, if we're doing something where it's like you just can't do that live, it's going to lose its effectiveness because it's just too far away. When we get into the short films and we get into some of these longer, weirder pieces, that's where I feel like I don't need this. And I will get to, when we get to my least favorite, I'm telling you right now, Chad is at the top of my gosh darn list, because there's no point. And the fact that it's a pre-tape, to Andrew's point, there's no reason for that. Put that on Mad TV. Put that on, and put it on Mr. Show if you want. It's not good enough for Mr. Show, but so I like this commercial parody of the election. I like a good music video parody. If the music video, is because you're parodying something specific with that. I actually think the John Belushi dancing on the grave, I don't think it's a good sketch. I don't think it's that funny. I think it's ironic in hindsight, but when I first saw it, when John Belushi and Gilda Radner were still alive, I didn't think it was that funny. Whatever. So I agree that there have been times where they've relied way too much, where it's pre-tape. In this episode, I feel like we're at a pretty good pace, and I do think sometimes a good pre-tape can make the next live sketch funnier, because it's let us reset emotionally a little bit and gives us the breath we need to come back for the live sketches where it's not as tight. There's going to be air within lines. There's going to be audience laughter. And so mixing that up for me as an audience member is a really nice mix if it's balanced correctly, to Andrew's point.
Yeah. If a psychic told me in 2020 I'd be speaking to the Take Master General, I would know that it's you, Rich Tackenberg. Exactly. Yeah, but
I also wanted one more point to add to, because Darin brought up a good point. I mean, I love the 10-to-1 sketch. I love the the Africa sketch. One of the things we don't talk about enough is SNL has this history of weird. We have this deep history of weird 10-to-1 sketches, but we actually have a pretty thin history of weird 10-to-1 sketches written and performed by women, and that's what I like, that we put this in the box of. you're not going to get this sketch from Mikey Day and Alex Moffat. You're going to get this sketch from women writing and performing together in a way that it's a color to the comedy palette that we really didn't have for a long time. So while I don't think it was the perfect sketch, and I actually agree, I think Adele laughing harder than the sketch itself sort of really, she was laughing harder than the audience. And I always say, if you're going to break up, you can get away with it if you're laughing as hard as the audience is at home, but it doesn't quite work if you're laughing harder than us. And this was that case. But I love that they went there. And I love that we were really going out on this limb in a way that a lot of the guys on the show couldn't have done.
Yeah, it's almost like I agree with you. There is a history of like them not putting women in that spot, but in the last few years with this cast, we did have like the Cecily Strong and Vanessa Bayer doing like the porn star stuff.
See, the porn stars is I think of that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like maybe the Kate McKinnon with her cats, like that thing. That's the type of thing that we've kind of looked at in that role. But I agree, this is kind of that vein for sure. Darin, let me bring you in. What do you think about this whole debate of pre-tapes and their impact on the show?
I mean, they're interesting. I mean, like we said, they've had pre-tapes on the show like forever since the beginning. But I do remember like them becoming more popular, like when Andy Samberg came on. And I also think it's probably worth noting that when he was coming out with those Lonely Island shorts, that's also around the same time YouTube was coming into play. Mm-hmm. So like we were sort of getting, as we were getting more acclimated with YouTube, we were kind of getting more and more used to seeing, videos in like little, 5 or 4 minute bursts. So the two of them sort of coming in up together at the same time kind of maybe helped SNL. Well, maybe it did, like helped SNL like raise its profile a bit more. And also with the videos, with the pre-tapes, you're able to like, cut it a little bit better and make it a little bit more shiny and glossier and like, make it funnier. Edit it down or whatever. Whereas with live, performances, it is what it is. You go out there, you do what you can. If you soar, you soar. You fail. But I forget what's going.
That's a good point about the rise of short internet videos. Along with what Andy and Lonely Island we're trying to do. But to me, the biggest value of the pre-tapes is that you can just do stuff that you can't do on a stage. You can really take it to the next level with graphics and creative shooting that just couldn't be done with a studio. So I'm not hating on pre-tapes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they've just been getting better and better. I mean, like last season with the Grouch like trailer, I look at that, it's like that's like a movie quality trailer with David Harbour in a garbage can. That's fantastic.
God, that was so good.
But an example of a pre-tape that easily could have been a live sketch that I think didn't work is Ass Angel Jeans. I think that was fine, but it didn't need to be a pre-tape, and it sort of was, and so you didn't have the audience energy laughing at that, and I don't think that the graphics and the music production helped.
Yeah, I'm curious if I like went back and I watched a few different SNL episodes from different eras. I would think that the ones that always appeal to me, besides the actual specific quality of the pre-tape, is the ones where they go from a live sketch to a pre-tape back to a live sketch. And the reason being, it's kind of like the same argument we were talking about, Rich, about it being a party, is that you have this feel that's like, okay, during this pre-tape, they probably were setting up for the next sketch and it's exciting. And like, you kind of think like, oh, this is part of the show. And I don't know, there's just like a certain element of like, okay, they're going from pre-tape to commercial that feels a little bit like on a down note, as opposed to like, riding the momentum of the sketch, pre-tape sketch.
Especially when you're doing live sketch pre-tape of a commercial parody like Super Fun Ball and then back to a live sketch. It's this meta experience of it's a fake commercial where a real commercial would have been, and I love it. It's the best.
Yeah, I'm with you. But Rich, let me go back to you because I can't wait to hear your take on Chad, and I think I know what you're going to say, but I want to hear it. Give me your Pete Davidson Chad take.
My reaction to the Pete Davidson Chad videos is the Chad reaction to everything else going on in the Chad world. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay. I thought it was fun once. It wasn't funny the second time. The third time it was kind of funny almost because you brought it back again. I don't get it. I don't think that this is, my problem with the Chad sketches is I'm not a comedy writer. I'm not, as a fan of television, once I've seen this sketch, as soon as you set up Chad in a haunted mansion, in my head, with my wife and I and my dog sitting on my couch, I wrote every joke that they did before it happened. And I was just watching it play itself out. Okay, it's going to be, okay, he's going to disappear when they go, oh, yep, then he did it. So I actually feel like I can give Pete Davidson some real props in this episode, but it's not this. I feel like this is it's just a rerun to me. I'm very bored. Now, that said, if someone else loved it, I totally get it. If it tickles you in a way that it doesn't tickle me, I get it. But I'm very done with the Chad sketches. And the pre-tapes Chad sketches, I think, are really just much ado about nothing.
Yeah, that's very interesting. For me, my biggest concern about these Pete Davidson Chad sketches or pre-tapes is that I'm worried, when Pete Davidson came on SNL, his big introduction was, let's bring him on a Weekend Update. Let's let him do some stand-up. We had this whole run of him, dating Ariana Grande and getting engaged to her that everyone will remember. And we have, his other, things that he's gone on through his life. And we've basically kind of grown up with Pete on Weekend Update. But besides that, this is the only sketch work that I think Pete Davidson will ever be remembered for is his Chad stuff. I can't think of anything else. And Darin, tell me if I'm wrong here, but I don't know. I just worry about the legacy of Pete Davidson, being that Chad is his only character that people will ever remember.
Yeah, I think his legacy will be okay. 'Cause, he is. When he first came on the show, I really wasn't crazy about him. I thought as an actor, he wasn't that great, but he is getting better as an actor. And I do enjoy his segments behind the Weekend Update desk when he's just him talking. That's, I think, when that is his best. It's just he goes into stand-up comedian mode where he's just kind of riffing all these jokes, riffing with Colin. That's when he shines. But Chad, it's just a character that the first time I saw him, I was like, all right. It didn't wow me, and they just kept bringing him back, and I just kept thinking, I don't know anybody who's really pumped to see Chad or just excited for a Chad sketch. I really think it's just for super Pete Davidson fans who love anything he does. If you ask the average person, they're like, no, I don't like Chad. It's whatever. It's just a character that just kind of hits the same beats over and over. There's no real change to it. There's no real difference to it. And you can do something like that in a sketch What Up With That, where where it's going to happen. It's the same beat, but it's just so much fun. You enjoy it. But usually when you have somebody like Chad where the beats and where it's going to go, where is there to go? It's just he just hits one note.
So they're
not that great a note.
They're beating up the same joke over and over and over again. But I don't stay awake at night hating on Pete Davidson because of these sketches. But it's the same joke over and over again, and I don't hate it, but it's okay. So I don't know.
And by the way, I'm not hating on Pete Davidson. I'm hating on Lorne for picking the sketch. I understand Pete Davidson wanting to do it. If I had a character, I would do it over and over again. I just hate that it gets picked. The one thing I don't know is it could be a guest host favorite. It could be something that Adele says, I'd love to be in a Chad sketch. Julia Louis-Dreyfus did it, and that could be fun. So I could see that. Now, I will give Pete Davidson props this week because, we often lovingly mock how bad he is in sketches. Usually his job is to stand behind Chris Rock and giggle, in some dumb outfit. But in the grandma sketch, he was amazingly competent as the boyfriend who's, in between gigs right now. And he almost to the point, I wonder if he was the writer of the sketch. If there was any sketch this week, I wish I knew who wrote it, was that sketch, the grandma sketch. But Pete did a very serviceable, admirable job and absolutely made me laugh about having to finally admit, I'm unemployed. I don't have a job. I thought he did very, very good there.
Yeah, I agree with you about that. He didn't do his typical laugh behind someone thing that Pete does a lot of times. Okay, so we talked about some stuff we like, some stuff we like, some stuff we didn't like. One of the things I do want to cover before we get into a little bit more analytics and who is doing great in the cast through the first 4 episodes is Weekend Update. And Darin, you brought up Che before, and the type of things that he's saying. So let me know, what have you thought about Weekend Update in the first few episodes and how they're doing?
The first episode and this past episode I thought were weren't that great. I thought they were okay. But the second and third episode I thought were super strong. He had like some real zingers, like that one sketch where not one sketch, but that one segment he has where when people were getting NBC flack for having Trump on for the town hall, and then he said, "Well, what can I say? We have it tight." And then they show Bill Cosby and Matt Lauer. That was scathing. I was like, holy cow! Like that's the thing I love about like Che, just because he has that little element of danger. You could see that he has that little bit of like same thing that maybe Norm had, or maybe even Dennis Miller, like where it's just he has like that little element of danger that SNL really needs. Like he just feels like, I'm going to say this joke, and if you love it, great. If not, whatever. I'll just move on to the next one. And he has that very kind of, I don't want to say I don't care attitude, but he's very he just believes in the joke, even if he knows the joke is kind of wrong. But he loves the joke so much he'll just say it. And like that's why I like Che.
He treats the Weekend Update desk like a comedian doing stand up, just like going for it in the clubs. Like, all right, if this doesn't work, maybe I don't have to say it in the next place, but I'm going for it now.
I agree with everything you guys are saying, but the capper was clearly this week where he shared mock disappointment that the president didn't die.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was like, wow, we have found the edge and we are standing on it and looking over. I was like, I can't believe that got through everyone clearing that. It was hilarious. And then he can also make a joke about how Phil Collins is in a studio apartment. I love that he's playing both sides, ultra edgy and ultra silly. It was really fun.
If I can make a little bit of a comparison, I'm gonna tell a story on the podcast that I don't think I've told before, but I was in New York in December of 2013, and I went to the Comedy Cellar. I don't know if any of you guys have been there before, but I was there, and it's a very popular comedy club that's very small, and people, many famous comedians have been there. And I went with a couple friends, and we were just there for the like Christmas holidays. And we walked in, and there were a lot of like not too many big name comedians, but it was pretty funny. And we were sitting there, and the guy comes on the microphone, the MC, and he basically says, "All right, guys, we have a surprise for you, but we're going to need everybody to put away their cell phones." So we said, "Okay, sure." So we put our cell phones away. All of a sudden, Dave Chappelle walks in, sits right on the piano, lights a cigarette, and starts going over new material. And this is like before he's come back, and he just starts riffing, and he starts making fun of the entire audience, and he's just like doing his thing. And I was like, this is probably going to be like one of the greatest comedic moments of my life, because I'm not seeing rehearsed, stuff. I'm seeing like his raw, like going at it, like just having fun with the audience. And really, like when he would tell a joke and he was clearly telling a story about his life, he was reacting to what everyone else was doing to him. And it was like the pure live comedy stuff that I love. And probably, as Andrew, you're describing, that you would love to see too. And I just feel like that's what we get from Che now on a weekly basis, is we get, if this wasn't, on NBC at, I guess 12:15 when they air Weekend Update, I could picture Che just like sitting on a piano, lighting a cigarette, and making fun of the audience and just telling jokes that talking about the president dying and doing things that you wouldn't see. And that's what I love about having a dangerous cast member in there, whether you love or hate Che. It's exciting to see something different. Andrew, I'll bring you in.
Well, I mean, you're ripping my heart out with that story about Dave Chappelle sitting down smoking a cigarette. Oh my Lord. I mean, he's my favorite comedian of all time. And that's the stuff you dream about. That people talk about him sitting down doing 3 or 4 hours or something, just rambling.
It was crazy.
That's the stuff dreams are made of. Yeah. One thing that I will say, okay. And it might bring me to a second point. So there were 2 things that I noticed during this episode. And, we didn't spend a lot of time on the monologue, but at the very end of the monologue, Adele said something along the lines of, I really hope you enjoy this show as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you guys, which is a strange thing to say during the monologue. Like, people don't say stuff like that. You kind of wonder if it was improv or something. We know how much Lauren hates improving on the monologues, but it kind of set maybe like a little bit of a warmth, just planted a seed of warmth for the show. And then there was this, it felt like a really brief but real moment during Weekend Update, and I don't even remember the setup to the joke, but the punchline was, that Michael Che said, well, that'd be like, my uncle saying he doesn't do drugs anymore while he's holding my TV. And then it cuts to Jost while everybody's laughing, and you hear Che in the background say, I hate that. And I went back and watched it a couple times, but it was like, it was this unique moment where he was kind of like relating to like real pain, or you wonder if maybe his uncle actually like did suffer from addiction or some sort of problem like that. And it just really caught me. Both those moments just seemed so real and strangely genuine. Not that SNL is not genuine, but the Adele thing caught me, and the Michael Che thing. Maybe those are the two moments that I've been thinking about more than any other since the episode aired. And I wondered if you guys had noticed that stuff or had any comments on that.
Definitely. I mean, that's the stuff that we want to see. Is we want to see like the fun, the things. And it really leads me into my point that I was going to make next, which is the Village People thing that they did, really reminded me of stuff that they've done. I guess this was your era, Andrew, but it was really like, you remember when Chris Kattan used to come out in front of Jimmy Fallon and Tina Fey, and he would be like playing somebody, like in front of the desk, and you can kind of see that Weekend Update is, takes place on home base, and they end the show that way. And it's like, you see Che and Jost like peeking through the Village People saying goodnight. Like, it's fun when they do things that are different and exciting. And like, I just want them to continue to do these things on a weekly basis. And that's what makes it fun for us. Rich.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the energy was fantastic. I noticed that on the Hulu, on the replay, they added closed captioning in a disco font because a lot of it was us watching it and me pausing and telling my wife, this is what this is. She couldn't quite make out what they were saying. But, to do some, what I love about a Weekend Update piece, when a feature piece is when that combination of super silly and super edgy at the same time. And they were like, it was this very, very silly idea, but then they sort of bring in this whole idea of Dershowitz and Epstein, and it's sort of like it walked this really weird line of where when they want to shave Ivanka's head, they're going to create a fake barber shop to shave her head. Like, I just it was so fun. I thought it was just a great energy, and it was really fun. I love when we end the Weekend Update on these big high energy set pieces that had the laughs to support. It wasn't just big and loud. It was big, loud, and really, really fun.
There was one point in the Village People part that I really liked. I don't know if a lot of people caught it, but when they were singing the YMCA song, and then they talked about Alan Dershowitz, and then Alex Moffat came across saying, hello, and then he walked across. Yeah. And then they, I think, the Jost stopped them, and then they went back to singing. And as they're singing, Alex comes across again, but he kind of does like a pirouette and sort of leaps over as they're singing. I don't know why that part tickles me, but it really does. Because it looked like improv, that he wasn't supposed to do that. So I don't know, something about that moment just makes me smile.
Yeah. It's really great. And I think if I'm just going to point out one thing that I love that Jost did this week was the joke about, Obama being 15 years younger than the current candidates now, and him saying that's like signing Willie Mays right now. That just
was great.
That sang to me. That was so funny. But okay, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we really liked in this episode, and I'm happy to hear that, and a lot of stuff that reminds us of previous eras in the show. I want to move on to our next section, which is talking a little bit about analytics, and I've been trying to figure out over the last few weeks how to include certain analytics. I know you can always check out our Twitter page, SNL Stats, where we're going to post some interesting stuff. But I got in touch with someone, Andrew, you might know from the Live from New York Reddit. It's a guy named Mike Murray, and he does screen time captures of every single show. So he will go through the show and he will record screen time for, everybody who's on the show, how they're doing. And really the ultimate goal is, and this is something, Darin, I know we spoke about in the preseason, is how do you figure out who is doing well on the show? Because comedy is so subjective. We talked about how the different cold opens stood out to every single person on the panel. How do we know which cast members are really doing well and are not doing well? So one of the things is cast member appearances, which I've been putting at the bottom of the screen. One of them is screen time. So our friend Mike Murray, who I spoke to this week, said he's going to be sending us some analytics on a weekly basis to kind of go over some stuff. So I'm going to see if this is going to work. I hope you guys like it. Let me know if you don't, and if it's maybe a little bit too complicated for, a medium that is, like a podcast medium like this. But if you like this a lot and you want to continue to hear more analytics, I am going to be doing a full interview with Mike Murray in a couple weeks, where he's going to talk about the history of the show and, who's dominated screen time throughout different eras of the show. And he's kind of going back and looking at that. So I'm just going to share something on the screen right now. And this is our power rankings for this episode of the show. So if you go to the Live from New York Reddit and you check it out on a weekly basis, Mike posts these power rankings, which are really interesting to talk about, because we're able to look at the show from more of a numbers perspective instead of just a subjective comedy perspective. So naturally, on a weekly basis, you're going to have the host have the highest score because the host is in the most sketches. So what we're looking at really is, let's take out the host, let's take out the, the Maya Rudolphs of the world who come in. I want to look at the cast and who's doing really well. So as we can see here, we're going to talk about our top 5 that are on here from the cast. And we have Kate at number 2 behind Adele. We have Beck at number 3. We have Heidi at 5 right behind Maya, Colin, and Bowen. So that's really interesting to me. And we're going to talk, if you want to kind of know how these numbers worked, it's a little bit of more detail that I want to get on, I want to talk about more when I speak to Mike. But basically, it's a formula that talks about the number of appearances that you make on the show. And those appearances include, you get more points if you are a main cast member, like in a sketch. And if you are a supporting cast member in a sketch, you would get less points. And then he also times screen time. So if you're talking about the Madame, is it Vivelda sketch? That's what it was. The psychic. If you're not actually physically on the screen, but you're sitting around the round table, you don't get points unless you are, being shown on screen. So we wanted to take a look at some combination of appearances on the show and screen time and come up with some analytic to describe that. So let's talk about this episode specifically and the power rankings for this episode. So our top 5, like I said, Kate, Beck, Heidi, Colin, and Bowen. So I'm going to go around the panel. Tell me anything that stands out to you about, some of these people who are at the top of the list and how you think that they're doing this season. And I'll start with you, Rich.
I think in this particular episode, I think I was surprised how much Beck specifically was such a big anchor. And he was good in everything that he did. But I think that, in a lot of the sketches, the Bachelor sketch, it could have been Mikey Day, it could have been Alex Moffat, in the Ask Jeans, like, in the pre-tape, the election bit. So I was surprised that Beck got this many kind of anchory kind of pieces, not for talent, but I'm surprised that it wasn't split up more. I don't know if that's a factor of writing, but that sort of struck me. I was also struck, to me, when you talk about power rankings, my non-scientific way is, if I had to guess by what I saw, who are the most senior members of the cast, because generally that's where you see, Keenan gets the most screen time, Kate gets the most screen time, very interesting to see how much time, over this season, how much time Bowen's been getting, which has been great, how much time Ego has been getting, how much time Chris Redd has been getting. I feel like they're sort of punching above their weight as far as compared to where they are in the pecking order of how many years they've been on the show. And I was really surprised to see Mikey Day reduced to basically a non-speaking part, just being in the Village People this week and not even having a specific line there. I was really surprised by that. And I think Kyle Mooney, I don't think he was in anything this week. And that was also very surprising to me. So you wonder, sometimes this happens. I mean, I think we saw this happen. Oh my God, I hate when I blank on an old cast member's name. I'll have to come back to it. But,
no problem.
Sometimes we see this happen where really good cast members, especially utility players, just hit a point where they're starting to get less and less on the show and not more and more on the show. And you go, oh, I think that's a bad idea. Taran Killam, that's what I was going to say. I love Taran Killam. There was a certain point where newer, younger guys were getting more screen time than Taran Killam was. And I thought, oh, that's just I don't know why, but something about that is bad. And I think we're starting to see that with some of the current guys.
Yeah, so here's something interesting that when you take a look at the analytics a little bit more, we talked about Ego, and she's one of those people that I pointed out on Twitter has been very involved with the show through the first 4 episodes. I'm like pleasantly surprised to see her so much on the show. But if you actually take a look a little bit deeper, she's actually 13th on the power rankings from this week, and she was still in 3 sketches. So the most cast that a cast member was in this week was Keenan and Beck with 4. And then we had Kate, Pete, Heidi, and Ego with 3. So then how do you get Ego at 13th on the power rankings? That's because she's actually been in sketches, but she hasn't necessarily always gotten the screen time she should get. She actually only got 3 minutes and 21 seconds of screen time, even though she was in 3 sketches this week. So if you do the math on that, she gets about a minute of being actually physically on screen, even though she's in more sketches. So it's an interesting analytic to track, because I want to see, is she continuing to get the roles and then more and more, important appearances in those roles as we move forward? Because I think Mike had her in 3 sketches this week, but not in any main roles of those 3 sketches. So, that's just something interesting to track. But Darin, I'll bring you in here. Anything stand out to you about any of the cast members this week?
Well, I mean, in fact, Kate McKinnon is she's like number 2. I mean, she's pretty much like everywhere all the time. And I mean, that might be because some people say this might be her last season, or I don't know, but yeah, she's like kind of still up there. I mean, there are a few cast members I would still like to see a little bit more of. I've said it 100 times, like I'd love to see more of Melissa, but yeah, it's weird how like she's been in the show for a while, but it feels like the show still doesn't know how to use her. Like, she's a great singer, she has a great voice, but I don't really hear her singing that much. She does amazing impressions, but now it seems like Chloe's like their go-to person for impressions, and I don't know, it doesn't feel like they know exactly how to write for her, or maybe she's not writing herself. I don't know why we don't see more Melissa, but I don't know. We kind of done what
I would agree, Darin. I mean, I really felt like the 2 extra times that we saw Maya Rudolph come back, those were both characters that could have been played by Melissa Villaseñor. And I don't know. I love Maya Rudolph. She can do no wrong, but I don't know why we needed to see her in the grandma sketch and then in the ass special. When you've got so many talented cast members, and you could have given Melissa a chance to play a role like that.
Right. Like I remember like a couple episodes ago, Chloe Feynman had that Drew Barrymore show sketch, which was a great sketch. I loved it. It's a great pre-tape. And it was literally like her own sketch. She got to anchor a sketch where it was her and her Barrymore impression and her Nicole Kidman impression. And it was just all her. And I was like, why couldn't somebody write something like that for Melissa? She can do like a ton of stuff. I don't know why.
And why wasn't Melissa in that sketch, so that you had Drew Barrymore interviewing one of Melissa Villaseñor's characters so they could play off each other and maybe get something going there?
Yeah, she does like a great like Whitney Cummings impression. She does a great Sarah Silverman. She does like a lot of good stuff, and I don't know why. I mean, we've seen her impressions here and there, like sporadically, but just not enough to be, to like stick in our memories like we've seen Chloe do. Like Chloe's just been pumping out like, the Drew Barrymore show and all that stuff during the SNL at homes to like for everybody to go, oh, that's her. And like, she's also been putting them out on like Instagram and stuff so people can sort of see it. And they go like viral a little bit more. So maybe Melissa needs to do that, or I don't know. But that's my Melissa rant for the day.
No, it's good. It's good because that actually, when we were talking about Weekend Update, one of the comments I did have was I'm not sure that the show still knows what to do with Melissa. So that is very true. And as far as these power rankings are concerned, I mean, she's 15th on the power rankings. Basically, all the other repertory players that she's above were, Mikey Day and Alex Moffat. And then you have like a bunch of featured players. You have Higgins, who did a voiceover role. And then you have AD, Cecily, and Kyle, who weren't even on the show. So, I mean, even when she's on the show, she's still, as far as screen time is concerned, not getting a lot of it. Andrew, let me bring you in here. Any stats stand out for you?
Well, I do look at these stats every week on Reddit, and as far as the top of the list, nothing shocking there. It is strange. I'm not sure how Colin Jost got 3 more minutes of time than Michael Che, since they do the same job. That stands out a little bit.
So to clarify, so the actual it is a little bit of a formula that we'll discuss in a future podcast. But Colin got 6 minutes and 57 seconds of screen time, whereas Che got 5 minutes and 22.
Okay, so it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. It's more of a like a number formula. So the time that is there is not the actual like screen time, but you'll see that actually going across the bottom of the screen right now.
Gotcha. Something that we didn't see much Chloe Feynman this episode, but I will say I think this is like maybe 2 years from now, we're going to talk about SNL like it's her show. Like, I think she has star power just in spades. And I think, the Drew Barrymore sketch obviously was really exciting, but she seems to never fail at anything she tries. And I just feel like she steals the show every time she's on camera. I think we might be saying this kind of stuff toward the end of this year, but definitely, when Kate and Cecily and Aidy are gone, I think there's a good chance we're going to think of it as Chloe's show, almost the way people think of it kind of as Kate's show now. And also on this, since you brought up Higgins on this list, I'll just throw this out there because it's a conversation that seems to happen on a lot of podcasts. People like to talk about who's going to take over for Lorne. And I like never hear anyone say Higgins, and I'm completely sold that it's going to be Higgins. He's been around for a long time. He writes. He's been on the production side for a long time. He obviously, I think of him kind of as Lauren's right hand man. People say Keenan or something. Listen, Keenan would be great, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a guy like Steve Higgins, who just has so much expertise under his belt. So just as long as we got him up here.
Yeah, that would make sense. I would assume he'd have to drop whatever role he has still on the Tonight Show. But that would be like, if you were a betting man, I think he would have very good odds. So it's a really good take. So I mean, those are some of the analytics. Like I said, we're still kind of figuring out how we're going to show these in a way that makes sense on a podcast. Obviously, if you're watching the video, if you're listening right now, I encourage you to watch the video, because we do have a screen up that shows some of these stats, and we're going to get into them in more detail in a couple weeks. But just so you guys know, as far as the cast members that have the highest score through the first 4 episodes, I took a look at all of Mike's stuff, and basically you have in the top 4, you have Kate, Beck. So, I mean, that's 2 Kates, 2 Becks. They're basically dominating the show through the first 4 weeks. Then you have a Mikey, a Colin, a Pete, a Heidi, a Chris, and a Keenan. So that's, shared around. But if you're talking about the 2 stars of the first 4 episodes, it's really Kate McKinnon and Beck Bennett.
But would you say that Beck Bennett felt like the star of the first 4 episodes? I wouldn't say so. So I think he's great, but I don't. But I know that. But that's what's so interesting about the power ranking. And yet, is there a Beck thing that we've seen in the last 5 episodes that we're all going to be quoting tomorrow? Not as much as some of the people who got far less screen time.
Yeah, so it's interesting because numbers, like I said, numbers are objective, but comedy is subjective. So it's like, how do you take a look at it, and how do you decide what, which cast members are really doing the best? We can say that Beck is a statistical guy. He's the straight man in a lot of sketches, so he's going to get high numbers and he's going to knock them out of the park. But is that like a baseball player, that hits for a high average, but isn't necessarily hitting the home runs that makes you, walk away from the show and feel confident that, this is your star of the entire cast. So yeah. Anyways, that's the perspective from a statistical perspective. So that's kind of some cast discussion. Does anyone else have anything else about any of the cast members they want to say before we move on to what's coming up?
Just a shout out to Adele for doing a pretty solid job. She's not an actress. She's not a comedian. She's never done live TV. She didn't come on to sing. She was very comfortable being the second or third banana in a sketch and not having to be the star of a lot of the funniest sketches. And, the Bachelor sketch was just so fun. We didn't talk about it. I thought it was hilarious, but good on her. It was just a really nice, warm, solid job by her. I was really, really happy.
Totally agree with that. And, obviously she wasn't the musical guest, so I did not anticipate that like all yesterday and today I would have 4 Adele songs stuck in my head.
Cannot get them out of my head. Get them out of my head.
But it was a great sketch, and it was a great way to use her talents. You don't bring her on and not get her to sing something. So great job. I didn't know I liked Adele as much as I do apparently today.
Yeah, and I was thinking a little bit of a missed opportunity. I know it's not Thanksgiving, but to do a hello, they did that Hello Adele sketch a few years ago, maybe
So
doing
great.
something to that effect, which I think was like a classic.
That was great. That was a fantastic pre-tape.
Such a great sketch.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's turn to John Mulaney, because I'm so excited when his name popped up. I was thinking they're going to have somebody great, and we're talking about somewhat of a record pace for him hosting the first few episodes. I know that we had superfan Sammy, who was on with us last week. He said, in 20 years from now, we're going to talk about the all-time host John Mulaney, because he's really on like a Buck Henry, Steve Martin, Alec Baldwin pace as much as he's hosting in the past few years. He was a writer on the show from season 34 to 37, 2008 to 2012. He appeared on Weekend Update a few times, and I think he made 6 appearances in all. But basically, since the last 3 years, he's hosted 3 times and he's cameoed 3 other times, and now we're on to hosting number 4. So I guess I'll go around the panel. Andrew, you seem so excited to have John Mulaney next week. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I just don't think there's many stand-ups that are doing better than John Mulaney as far as his just the way he delivers jokes, his timing, his balance, the way he controls an audience. I mean, he's about as good as it gets. One of the first things I said on this was, if it were up to me, it'd be a comedian every time. And to have someone of John Mulaney's stature again and again, every time he hosts, those are some of my favorite episodes again and again. Obviously, I'm thinking about a part 4 of the tetralogy, because the first 3 were just so glorious. So I'm really looking forward to that, which means Pete will get some screen time again, and as well as Chris Redd. I'm really looking forward to his monologue. I just love stand up, and monologue is basically a stand-up set, or short stand-up set. So I'm looking forward to that. I expect him to bring a fresh new take on dealing with COVID that maybe we haven't heard from someone else. I don't see how he could not talk about that. And a guy as smart as Mulaney is gonna have an interesting take on it. The Strokes are gonna kick ass. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is gonna be a fantastic show. When I saw that, live during the show the other night, I immediately was texting people, "Oh my God!" So I think we're looking at a pretty exceptional episode coming up here, and on Halloween. How exciting!
Yeah, I wonder if we're gonna get COVID the musical on Saturday as far as part 4. Darin, what do you think about Mulaney coming in?
I'm a big fan of Mulaney as well. I'm happy to see him come back. He's a guy who knows how SNL works. He's been there for 3 years, and he just knows the inner workings of it. Like you said before, he wrote on it, so I'm sure he'll come up with some good, maybe some sketch ideas, and he's comfortable there. And I think it's just going to be it's going to be a good fit. I look forward to his stand up, and part of me is kind of, I guess, in the back of my mind, hoping a little bit maybe that since he's going to host, maybe he'll bring Bill Hader with him, and because since it's a Halloween episode, maybe they'll do a Vincent Price sketch. Maybe I don't know,
or Halloween Stefan, maybe.
Yeah, Halloween Stefan, that could be something. So I'm hoping for that, and of course the Strokes. I mean they're awesome rock band, high energy. I have a good feeling about this one. Hopes are high for this.
Yeah. One. I agree. And Rich, I really feel like the party begins next week when the stagehand throws the microphone up to John Mulaney, catches it in one hand, and he begins his monologue.
Oh, that's gonna. I love a Mulaney monologue. The question that I'm gonna have is, I love LaGuardia Sushi and Bodega Bathroom. The question is gonna be, my guess is that those are so production intensive. Mm-hmm. Can they do it during COVID, or is the rehearsal and the coordination just gonna be too much that they say they can't? I think they either go all in, and Mulaney's been writing it for a week and a half, and he's got people rehearsing their parts via Zoom now, or they just can't pull it off. And so I'm really looking forward to another musical number, but I am bracing myself for the fact that it's just too ambitious that they can't do it. I love the idea, obviously, of bringing Stefan back. It's the perfect time for this. My wish in the number 2 slot, and only this week, is if we could somehow get Nick Kroll to do a cameo and we could do an Oh Hello segment on the show. I feel like the vibe would be perfect for that right now.
Perfect.
I think it would be so great. I hope that the theme of this episode beyond Halloween is less our final chance at election and more about election fatigue. I think that that's what the zeitgeist actually is right now. And like the election pre-tape we had this week, I hope we go more in that area rather than, okay, now let's recap these highlights of the election that we're all so tired of. But either way, super excited. And the Strokes, I mean, come on, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a great show.
Yeah, I'm really hyped for it. Okay, well, thank you so much for everybody joining the panel tonight. I want to go around and ask if you guys have anything to plug. So I guess, Rich, I'll send it back to you. Anything you got going on?
Yeah, I'll post about this on my Twitter. I'm never on my Twitter at Rich Tack, but I will post on it. Before the pandemic, I did a lot of live storytelling in Los Angeles. Now it's on the interwebs. There's a show a week from tonight, Monday the 2nd, 7:00 in Pacific time, where a bunch of us are telling some true stories live, and I'll be one of the guys there telling a story about seeing Van Halen and getting to meet the band. So if you're interested, come check us out.
Yeah, that's at Rich Tack, right?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Darin, so thank you for joining us. What do you have coming up? I know we have your SNL Nerds show every single week, but tell me what you got going on.
Yeah, not much. Just staying indoors, trying to keep the Rona off me. I don't have really shows coming up. Actually, no, that's not true. I do. I did a storytelling Zoom, like Rich, a couple months ago. And it's a story about the first fight I ever got into, first and only fight I ever got into, and they're gonna put it up on the Queen's Theater website. It was for my friend David Lawson's show at the Queen's Theater. So if you want to find out more about that, you can follow my Twitter account at Darin Credible, DARI Incredible. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and you could watch that show at I believe it's queenstheater.org. It comes out this Thursday. And the podcast, SNL Nerds, I do with my buddy John Trumbull out here in New Jersey. And we just talk about Saturday Night Live. We break down each episode, or the most recent episode that came out. This past summer, we talked about SNL movies. And, we have fun. We go off on tangents and we say inappropriate things. So if you want to, if that's your bag, you can follow us on the Twitter at SNL Nerds Show. And you can listen to the podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we're on the Non-Productive Network, so you can listen to us at non-productive.com.
Awesome. Andrew, well, this was your first podcast. How did you feel? And do you have anything to plug?
I felt great. Thanks for having me. I hope to be back sometime. I don't have much to plug, but if you guys want to check out the homemade episode that we made on Reddit, you can check that out. YouTube, it's the R Live from New York on YouTube, or you can check it out on Reddit. I do listen to Darin's show, so I'll say it's a great podcast, just like this one. So people should tune in. And if you want to hear me complain about how SNL cast members are underused, please check out at SNL Has a Cast on Twitter.
Perfect. And I hope to continue to connect with people from the subreddit. You guys are awesome. So if you've checked out the show or you're just checking out for the first time, welcome. And we hope you come back every single week. So speaking of that, once again, you can subscribe to SNL Stats on YouTube, search SNL Stats, and see any of our shows from any week. This was a really fun panel, and we've had really fun conversations every single week. I always tell the guys or anybody who's on with us before the show, basically, this is supposed to be you're hanging out at a bar with some friends talking SNL. So it's casual and fun, and we go through different things. So if you feel like you're a part of the party at the same way that we want to feel a part of the party when we watch SNL, I hope you feel that way when you watch our show. So please subscribe on YouTube or go to any podcatcher, search us up at SNL Stats, follow us on Twitter as well. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We hope everybody has a great week ahead, and we will see you next time.